So qualitative data analysis. So the very important part of doing qualitative research. For example, you would be having phenomenological research and you have already conducted an interview to the participants. So it could be individual and group interviews. So take note that when we talk of specialized individual interviews and focus group interviews, or we call it as well focus group discussion. And I know since you are teachers, we are very familiar with focus group discussion and individual interviews. They are actually the alternatives for gathering question-based data. So you don't need to prepare questionnaire kasi questionnaires will be utilized for quantitative research like Likert scale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on and the like. No. So when we do qualitative research, the main gathering instrument or qualitative instruments that we would be using would be individual and or group interviews. Okay, so the instrument, also called interview guides, or it could also be storytelling guides and facilitation checklist, whether in-depth interview or structured interview, could be framed differently depending on the SOP, no, statement of the problem you have included in your research. Then they are generally thematic by nature. That's why when we analyze the data that you have gathered from the interview, we'd be using thematic analysis. And that would be the first part of the discussion for today, thematic analysis. Few and open-ended, no, in orientation when you conduct an interview. You might be wondering if some professors would suggest you to prepare guide questions. So that could also be done. But make sure that you really know your research, you really know the things that you need to get from the interviewees. And then in order for you to be able to guide them, to direct them to the empirical data that you need. Okay? It should be sufficient and clear to the researcher, the subject matter, and then the key aspects or the variables that the researcher would like to gather. So as the researcher, you should be clear about the things that you want to get. So interviews are actually conducted because people are the primary sources, your informants. Okay, they could give you the data that you need. It is systematic and deliberate. You have to schedule your the time. As of the moment, you cannot have face-to-face interview. So, but we are allowing it could be online interview. You just have to inform your advisor about the online interview and any other way to conduct the interview in order for you to gather the data that you need. Remember this assumption, no? The assumption is that the interviewer, again, is knowledgeable about the subject and may even know the answer to some of the questions that you are asking. But of course, it should not be coming out from you as the researcher. Okay, it should be from the participants. So after conducting an interview, here comes QDA or qualitative data analysis. Oh, you should know how to analyze the data that you have gathered. And there are steps that should be considered when analyzing the data that you've gathered from the transcript of interview and depending on the research design. Okay, so when we have phenomenological research, we would be using thematic analysis in analyzing the data. Yeah, the PowerPoint is not moving yet. So I'm just giving you an introduction of qualitative data analysis in order for you to know the background. Why we would be discussing thematic analysis, codes. Yes, thank you for that, Ma'am Marfel. No, so in order for you to know what to do, so let's start. I hope you are ready. So the context here is this: you are done conducting an interview. So the first part would be thematic analysis, and thematic analysis is oftenly used when doing phenomenological research. Okay, so let's start with code. So a code in qualitative inquiry is most often a word or a short phrase that symbolically assigns a summative, salient, essence capturing, and or evocative attribute for a portion of based language based or visual data. So after conducting an interview, of course you have to transcribe, right? After transcribing, you now have the text. My suggestion is to make use of Excel file, and then per participant, you have to transcribe using the file in order for you to later on be able to compare the data that you were able to gather, particularly when doing constant comparison method. So when we say code, we are actually talking about a word. It could be coined words or phrase, no? A phrase that will represent the essence of the answer of the participants. It could be by sentence or by paragraph. We call it line by line coding. So line by line coding. You will now describe the answer of the participants or the informants to the questions that you ask. So therefore, from your question, you have to compare now and see the patterns and similarities to the answers of the participants, but make sure to describe them using codes. So let's proceed. So again, a word or coined words, it could be phrase, sometimes sentence. Okay, if you cannot really represent in a word or coined words or phrase the sentence provided by your informants, then you can make use of the sentence itself. So we call that in vivo coding. In vivo coding. In vivo coding, you will make use of the words or the phrase or even the sentence used by the participants or informants because you cannot describe it in any other words. So we call those words, coined words or phrase code. Take note. We call those words, coined words or words codes. In thematic analysis, we call them meaning units. So do not be confused. Meaning units. For constant comparison method, we call them codes, but they are still codes. It's just that we are using different types or techniques in analyzing the data and considering the authors or the school of thought who prepared the analysis. Okay, so meaning units are also the codes. When we say in vivo coding, we're actually talking about the words taken from the participants themselves. Are you still with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes po,
Yes,
Doc.
sir.
Yes,
Ayan.
Doc.
Clear naman. Codes pa lang yan. So do not be confused. Okay? Yan. So the data can consist of interview transcripts, particularly when you are gathering data when doing qualitative research. Wait lang. Malaki ng baso ko. May sore throat kasi ako. Sensya na. Participant observation or field notes, you have to take note. Then it could be journals or documents or literatures. Remember uh, that you have to focus your instruments in gathering the data. But in phenomenological research, just like what I mentioned a while ago, we actually focus on gathering the data using interview. It could be individual interview, specialized individual interview, or focus group discussion, particularly for triangulation of data. So the portion of data to be coded during first cycle coding process can range in a magnitude from a single word to full sentence to an entire page of a text to a stream of moving images. But if you keep on using the paragraphs or the sentence, then you wouldn't be able to look actually for the themes. So as much as possible, you have to keep on reading the transcript of the interview, and then if you can represent the document in a single word or coin words or phrase, then you I think better for you to stop for a moment in analyzing the data. Clear up your minds for personal biases, and then go back again when you are ready. Remember that as a researcher, there is a possibility that you already knew the answer to the questions that you are asking. But if you will answer or you will analyze the data that you have gathered based on what you know, then there is already a bias. So that means it is not anymore coming from the researcher, but it is from the participants, but it is already coming from you as a researcher. And that's what we want to avoid. Okay, we need to avoid that personal bias, particularly in analyzing the data that you have gathered from the transcript of interview. So again, at the start, there would be so many codes. Okay, that's why nga some researchers do not want to do qualitative research. But if you would be able to understand what I am telling you now, then it would be easier for you. What you need to do is to get only the data, empirical data, answering the questions that you have stated in the statement of the problem. So magnitude, no, from a single word, coined words, phrase, or full sentence, there would be so many representation, no, that can describe the meaning of the sentence or the paragraph based on the transcript of data. So don't worry, I'll show you an example later. We are actually coding for patterns and similarities. We want to know if there are similarities or patterns among the experiences of the participants. Okay? It's actually from their perception, from their experiences. And that is not a limitation. That's what you want to know. And that's what you want to tell the world, that their experiences are the same and their coping mechanism would be the same. And these are the themes. No, our aim is to, of course, look for the pattern and identify the theme or the themes that will best represent their experiences. So several to many of the same codes will be used repeatedly throughout. And remember, if there are repetitions of codes, then that's good, because you would be able to reach saturation point. So I've mentioned this several times. If there are no repetition of codes or words, then you would not be able to reach saturation point. Ayan, saturation point. From the first participants to the seventh participants, if there are patterns, similarities, same codes, then that's what you want to show to the panelists, that you have reached saturation point. Okay, there will be no rule of thumb except for saturation point in doing qualitative research. So this is both natural and deliberate. Okay? Natural because there are mostly repetitive patterns of actions and consistencies in human affairs because you have established the phenomenon at the start. The main reason why you are conducting an interview, the main reason why you are doing research. For example, experiences of regular teachers teaching students with ADHD. So they are regular teachers, but they are teaching students with ADHD. So there is a phenomenon. They are not SPED teachers. They are regular teachers. Therefore, the challenges or experiences in teaching students with ADHD by the regular teachers, maybe no, there are patterns, consistencies, or similarities. And that's what you want to show to the world. And deliberate because one of the coders, no, so you are the coders, primary goal is to find these repetitive patterns of action and consistencies in human affairs. So as documented in your research. So that's what you want to show. That's what you want to tell the world. These are the themes that will represent their experiences. These are the themes of their coping mechanism to the challenges that they have encountered. So ganun siya. That's what you want to do. So codifying and categorizing. To codify is to arrange things in a systematic order, to make something part of a system or classification, or to categorize. Because eventually, from your question number one, I think I need to show you the example for you to see. I'll stop for a moment. I'll just look at the example for you to know what I'm saying. I think I was able to show you this example. So categorizing is very important. So sample thematic analysis. Hope you can see the example now. Here is the question. What are the lived experiences of guidance counselors? So so that's the first question, no? What are the lived experiences of guidance counselor during the pandemic? So that means the informants narrated their experiences to the researcher, and that would be the transcript of interview. So there are so many, okay, answers, no, from different participants. P7 here would be the participant number 7, P1 the participant 4. And these are the meaning units and or codes. So this is thematic analysis. That's why it should be meaning units. But in order for you not to be confused, it could be codes and or meaning units. For constant comparison, we're making use of the word codes. So wag kayo mo-confuse ah. CCM, we will be using codes. For thematic analysis, we are using meaning units. But they are codes, as I mentioned a while ago. They are the words or the sentence or the coined words that will represent what the participant is saying. For
Mm,
example, as you can see in this yellow part,
P1.
can you see the presentation, the word file?
Yes, sir.
Yes
Yes,
po.
Doc.
Ayan,
Yes,
please
Doc.
listen very carefully ah. Yung iba hindi tinuturo to, pero for me, I'm teaching QDA because this is very important. No? So, this is the answer of the participant. No? Oo, compared ngayon kasi, pero alam mo mas mahirap eh, mas maganda. So it's very difficult to look for a certain word, no, or coin words that will represent. But see here, the participant is actually talking about adjustments. So that is your code, no? Adjustment. That is your code here.
Mm-hmm.
Adjustment will represent what the participant is saying. So imagine there will be many answers coming from the participants, and then you will represent them with words or coined words and or even sentence. So as I mentioned a while ago, it could be in vivo coding because eventually what you want to know is the patterns and the pattern and similarities among the answers of the participants. Yan ang kailangan nyong malaman. So, at the start, you will really represent all the sentence. It could be line by line, it could be sentence by sentence. Ano kayang ibig sabihin niya? What do you mean by this sentence? What do you mean by this um, phrase? You have to represent based on the perception or the experience of the participants and not based on your understanding. Okay? That's why when you conduct an interview, you have to observe the mannerisms or the actuations of the participants in order for you to be able to represent properly, appropriately, or correctly the sentence being mentioned by the participants. So our main goal after determining, no, categorizing now, you have to categorize now all the answers of the participants, common answers from the participants into one. So the meaning units that will represent all the answers of the participants, as you can see here, participant 4, these are the codes or meaning units, participant 2, these are the words which are similar. You can categorize them into one, and that is what we call the sub-themes. Now, the sub-themes will now categorize all the codes into one. So there will be two or more sub-themes. So here, the codes, adjustments, changes in the workplace and or environment, changes in work routine, changes in transportation due to pandemic, keeping physical distance, can now be categorized as changes in the workplace, okay, or
Psychological.
psychosocial adjustments. Remember, after doing this, you need validators. You have to ask thematician. Actually, the expert who will help you in doing this is thematician. So I'm actually a thematician and statistician as well. That's why I'm teaching you this. So that when you ask now the expertise of a thematician or a statistician, it would be easier for him to check or to validate the themes and or sub-themes. And for you to be able to explain properly. Because the last part, this is just the first stage, no? First few stages of analyzing data gathered from the interview. The final, which is very important, is writing. You will now explain the themes based on the experiences of the participants. So that is our aim when doing QDA, qualitative analysis, particularly thematic analysis, to determine the themes. And the themes or the theme will represent the sub-themes. Yan. Which is still under categorizing. Yan. Are you still with me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes
sir.
po,
Yes,
Doc.
sir.
Yes.
Yes
Clear
Opo.
naman?
po.
Yes po, Doc.
Yan. So, so that's what I mean when I say codifying, no? They are just the same in categorizing. Codifying will be utilized for constant comparison method for grounded theory research, and categorizing for thematic analysis, which is yung sub-themes and then the themes. You will now be combining the codes or the meaning units that are the same, that are common, and representing them in one word or one sentence or coin words. Okay, so that's our aim. Can you see now the presentation? Is it moving?
Yes.
Yes or
Yes
yes?
po. Yes
Yan.
po.
Sure.
So from codes to categories. So as you can see, these are now the codes. These are now the words. Code, code, code. Pedagogical, pedagogical. Socio-emotional. Style, personal expression, and technical. And then you will now categorize them, no, the codes. So the codes are actually taken from different participants. Take note from the different participants. But you as the researcher should categorize them. You have to combine the words that are common, categorize them, and then represent them into a category. So subcategory. Okay. Subcategory is used for constant comparison method, while sub-themes, but they are just the same. Sub, for a moment, subcat, and then sub, they are just the same. Subcategory and sub-theme. I use the chat box. Hopefully you can see the chat box. No? Sub-theme will be utilized for, yan, buti may nag-like. Ni Carmi Salaan. Thank you for that. Sub-theme will be utilized for themes or thematic analysis. Thank you. And then subcategory for constant comparison. So again, subcategory for CCM, theme for thematic. This will be included in your exam. That's why I'm using the chat box. But it's not in the PowerPoint. It's all in the mind. So codes, you have to categorize them. As you can see here, pedagogical, socio-emotional, style, personal expression, and technical can be categorized as instructional skills. Remember, there are so many codes at the start. Sa umpisa lang naman, at the start. Then, behaviorist techniques, group management, socio-emotional, unwritten curriculum, that could be management skills. Observe here that socio-emotional can be in the two subcategories. It's just okay. It's okay, no? There would be so many codes and there would be overlapping codes. So that's the most difficult part of it. Then eventually you would be able to determine the right, no, category for a particular code. You just have to read, keep on reading. Is this really suitable to this particular subcategory or sub-themes? Doc, in presentation of coding in table, should I include the extracted codes? Is there a specific template to be followed by FEU? Yes, there is a specific, no, but the extracted codes is that really the answer of the participant? Is it related to the data that you need? If it is related to the data that you need, then you may include. But if it is not, no, it's not needed. It's not empirical data. We call it empirical data. Then do not include. I have provided Ma'am Ellen with the templates to be followed. What I'm presenting you is actually the template that we are following. Okay, so I prepared that. I gave it to them para the students would be properly guided. And then eventually, the subcategories, subcategory 1 and subcategory 2, will now be finally represented by a category, teacher skills, which is, we call it themes. So the only difference when we say constant comparison, the stages that will be followed in constant comparison method would be more than four. Okay, we have the subcategory, we have the higher level category, and then we have the lower level category, and then we have the core category. But for thematic analysis, we only have from the transcript of interview that you have transcribed, to the meaning units, which are the codes, to subcategories or sub-themes, and then themes. Then you explain. So in there are techniques now, strategies or methods in coding. Then you have to code the start, then you have to sorting, which is of course categorizing, and then synthesizing, finalizing, and then theorizing. Remember, theorizing, because our aim in qualitative research is, I've been talking about it, qualitative research is actually theory building research, right? And it should be inductive from the transcript to the theory, because that's our aim, to build theory taken from empirical data from our participants. So thematic analysis for phenomenological research, I already mentioned. So this is actually now the process of identifying patterns or themes within qualitative data. And then Ron and Clark suggest that it is the first qualitative method that should be learned because it provides core skills that will be useful for conducting many other kinds of analysis. If you know thematic analysis, if you know you are very familiar with codes and constant comparison method, then it would be easier for you to do other qualitative research. This is the fundamental uh, analysis or qualitative data analysis that you should know when you are doing qualitative research. Gaya nga, I've decided to include this in methods of research because when you have your seminar in thesis writing, it's more of finalization of your chapters 1, 2, 3. There would be discussions, but few would be for the qualitative data analysis.